Princess Lyra of Zytheria walked along the crystal corridors of her palace, her silver robes flowing like liquid starlight behind her. The walls shimmered with the faint glow of bioluminescent plants, and the air hummed with the energy of the ancient empire. She paused by a window that looked out onto the sprawling city below, its towers reaching into the violet sky, and watched ships leaving for distant worlds. Her mother, Queen Solara, had ruled Zytheria for centuries with a hand of fire and frost. The queen's voice could command armies, silence courts, and crush rebellion before it began. Lyra, as the heir, had always known that her life would be one of duty, of strict alliances, careful words, and controlled emotion. Love, if it existed at all, was meant to serve the empire, not her heart. Yet lately, something restless stirred within her. She felt a pull toward a world she had never truly known, the human planets in the outer rim. They were fragile, fleeting, imperfect, yet alive in ways her immortal empire could not understand. Her curiosity had grown like a slow fire, burning in quiet moments when the palace was empty, and the stars outside seemed to whisper secrets only she could hear. The diplomatic visit to one of these human worlds had been arranged to strengthen trade agreements and scientific exchange. Lyra had expected boredom, cold protocol, and polite conversation. What she had not expected was him, Eric. He was a human scholar, tall and wiry, with dark eyes that seemed to look into her soul. He spoke with a quiet intensity, his words careful but honest, his questions thoughtful. While her court advisors discussed laws, treaties, and taxes, Eric spoke of the stars, of human life, of the small joys and sorrows that colored every day. He treated her not as a princess, not as the heir to a galactic throne, but as a person. Their first meeting had been under the white light of the planet's twin moons. She had wandered into the human city's library, curious to see how these fragile beings preserved knowledge. He had been there, hunched over a pile of scrolls, and had looked up at her with a smile that made her heart stutter. "You look like you're not supposed to be here," he had said, his voice gentle. "But maybe you belong more than you think." She slipped out under the cover of twilight, the sound of her own heartbeat loud in her ears. She walked through the quiet streets until she reached the small observatory where Eric worked. He was there, as always, bent over a telescope, charting the movement of distant stars. He looked up, and his eyes softened when he saw her. "You came back," he said, a mixture of surprise and relief in his voice. "I thought maybe I had scared you off with all my questions." Lyra marveled at the sight, the colors of burning gas, the light of distant suns, and the delicate way they seemed to dance across the darkness. She had seen stars all her life, but never like this. Not with someone who made her feel like she belonged in the vastness of the universe rather than above it. "Why do you look at the stars like that?" Eric asked softly. "As if they hold all the answers. I wonder if I am truly living for myself, or if I am only living for the Empire." They were dangerous, foolish, intoxicating. She knew that to follow her heart might mean defying her mother, risking her place in the Empire, even endangering herself. Yet the thought of turning away from it felt unbearable. Days passed, and their meetings became more frequent. They wandered through human cities at night, sharing stories and laughter, learning about each other. Lyra discovered the beauty of imperfection, the human way of failing, forgiving, and feeling. Eric, in turn, learned about her world, about the luminous cities, the floating gardens, and the endless skies of Zytheria. He asked questions, always with genuine curiosity, never with fear or awe. But the Empire would not remain ignorant. One of Lyra's loyal courtiers had seen her with Eric, hidden in the shadows of a quiet garden. News traveled fast in the alien court, and soon whispers reached the queen. Queen Solara summoned her advisors, her face calm but her eyes sharp as knives. "The princess is becoming reckless," she said. "I want every detail. Every human she meets, every word she speaks, every minute she spends away from our guidance. If she is to inherit the throne, she must understand her place, her duty. The heart is a dangerous thing, and I will not allow it to weaken Zytheria." And yet when she looked at Eric, the fear melted, leaving only longing. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the human city, Lyra made a decision she could not take back. She turned to him, her eyes shining with certainty. "Eric," she said, her voice trembling but firm, I feel something I cannot deny. Something I have never felt before." Lyra's heart raced, knowing that her confession, once spoken, could change everything. The Empire, the Queen, her family, her destiny, nothing would ever be the same. Eric smiled, a mixture of relief and awe lighting his face. "Then I will hold your heart as gently as I can," he said. Lyra's chest ached with joy and fear. She knew that this love, if discovered, would bring storms. She knew that her mother, the queen, would not be pleased. But for the first time, she felt alive. Not as a princess, not as an heir, but as someone who had chosen a path that was entirely her own. That night, as Lyra returned to the alien palace disguised as a diplomat's aide, she felt eyes upon her, not human eyes, but alien, sharp, and calculating. She knew the whispers had begun. She knew that her secret could not stay hidden for long, and yet as she looked at the stars, she allowed herself a smile. For the first time, she was certain of something. "I will not deny this heart," she whispered to the night, "even if it costs everything." Somewhere in the palace, Queen Solara paused, her thoughts sharp as a blade. She had heard the rumors, the whispers of defiance, of forbidden meetings, of feelings that could topple dynasties, and she had not yet spoken a word. The stage was set. A princess had chosen a path of her own. A human had entered a world not built for love. And an empire waited, silent and watchful, for the first spark of rebellion to ignite. Lyra's heart pounded as she closed her eyes, imagining Eric under the twin moons. She felt fear, yes, but also a thrill she had never known. The night was alive with possibility, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The palace of Zytheria was a kingdom of light and shadow, of beauty and discipline. Even far from her homeworld, the corridors of Lyra's temporary residence on the human planet whispered with reminders of her alien heritage. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, stern and unyielding. "You are a princess. You are heir. You cannot let your heart betray your duty." Eric waited for her in the observatory, his dark eyes lighting up the moment she entered. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said softly, gesturing for her to join him. "You're late." Eric leaned closer, his gaze searching hers. "Lyra, why do you hide from them, from me? Then we will face it together. Whatever comes, I will stand with you. You don't have to bear this alone." But the Empire did not rest, and neither did her mother. Back in the distant halls of Zytheria, Queen Solara gathered her advisors in a chamber of floating crystals. The glow from the walls reflected in her sharp eyes, which were now narrowed with concern. "The princess is becoming reckless," she said, her voice low but commanding. "She walks dangerously close to defiance. I will not allow her personal desires to endanger the Empire. Not now, not ever. We must act before it spreads." Her gaze was sharp, cutting through the room. "Watch her, track her movements, and remind her of the price of disobedience." The world she had hoped to explore with Eric freely was already closing in. Despite the tension, their meetings continued. They wandered through the human city at night, under the glow of lamps that flickered like distant stars. Eric spoke of his world with a passion Lyra had never heard in her palace, telling stories of small victories, quiet kindnesses, and the beauty of ordinary life. She listened, captivated, feeling a longing that was both thrilling and terrifying. "You see the world differently," she said one evening as they walked through a narrow street lined with blooming flowers. "I feel like I've been blind my whole life, and yet I cannot stay blind forever. The Empire is always behind me, even here." For a moment she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond duty, a life shaped by love and freedom rather than laws and decrees. But that fantasy was fragile, and she knew it could shatter at any moment. Then the first true danger arrived. One evening, while Lyra returned from a meeting with Eric, she noticed figures in the shadows, humans, yes, but not civilians. They were agents of the rival alien faction, sent to spy on her movements and report back to those who sought to manipulate her choice. Lyra's pulse quickened. If her secret was revealed, it could be used against her, against the Empire, and against Eric. She ducked into an alley, pressing herself against the wall. Her mind raced, trying to plan an escape without revealing her identity. But the shadow moved closer, and for the first time she felt the true weight of danger, not just to herself, but to the man she loved. Eric appeared as if drawn by some instinct, his eyes scanning the darkness until they landed on hers. He approached cautiously, whispering, "We need to go, now." Together they ran through the quiet streets, weaving between buildings until they reached the safety of the observatory. Inside, she sank to the floor, trying to steady her breath. "You're reckless," Eric said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But I cannot stay away from you. Even if it's dangerous." A warmth in her chest, a light behind her eyes when she felt strong emotions, especially around Eric. At first it frightened her. What if it was dangerous? What if it hurt him? But she could not stop it, nor could she ignore it. Eric noticed the change, though he did not yet understand it. "You're glowing," he said one night, his voice full of wonder. Not with light like lamps or crystals, but from inside. It's beautiful, Lyra. Their bond was no longer just fascination or curiosity. It had become something elemental, almost cosmic. Lyra felt a pull not only toward him, but toward her own hidden strength, the power she had inherited but never understood, the potential to change her world and perhaps the universe itself. But danger was never far. The alien court's whispers reached her through intermediaries, subtle warnings and threats veiled as advice. The princess must remember her place, one message read. Humans are not allies, they are tools or obstacles. Yet when she looked at Arik, she felt certainty for the first time. You are my choice, she whispered one night under the twin moons of the human planet. Even if the stars themselves oppose us, I choose you. But somewhere beyond the city, beyond the planet, forces were moving. Rivals, spies, and the weight of empires stirred in the shadows. Lyra's secret, fragile and precious, was at risk of exposure. The first step had been taken, and the path forward was uncertain, perilous, and full of longing. Lyra had chosen love, but the Empire and her mother's judgment loomed over her like a storm on the horizon. The night ended with a quiet, unspoken understanding between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But in the distance, shadowy figures watched, their intentions unknown. The spark of rebellion and forbidden desire had ignited, and nothing would ever be the same again. The twin moons of the human planet hung low in the sky, their pale light reflecting off the observatory's glass dome. Princess Lyra sat inside, her hands hovering over the strange human instruments that Arik had taught her to use. Each movement felt awkward but exhilarating, a small rebellion against the rigidity of her life in Zytheria. Arik watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. You're learning faster than I imagined, he said softly. But I can see it in your eyes, something else is happening, something powerful. The warmth in her chest, the glow behind her eyes, had grown stronger these past days. She had tried to hide it, tried to control it, but it pulsed like a living thing whenever she was near him. I don't know what it is, she admitted, her voice trembling. I've never felt anything like this before. You can control it. I believe in you. The alien faction that had been watching her saw an opportunity. A human agent, secretly allied with the rival aliens, approached the observatory under the cover of night. Lyra felt it immediately, the subtle shift in the air, the presence of someone watching, someone who intended harm. Her heart raced, and the glow around her flared, startling both herself and Arik. They're here, she whispered, stepping back. Arik followed, scanning the shadows. Who, humans or aliens? The human agent cried out in surprise, falling to the ground but unharmed. Lyra's power flickered, dangerous and raw. I didn't mean to, she gasped, fear and awe mingling in her chest. Arik grasped her shoulders. You're learning, that was incredible, but we need to control it. They'll come back stronger. Her power was both a shield and a weapon, and if she could not master it, it could bring disaster. The days that followed were tense. Lyra practiced in secret, focusing on her energy, learning to shape it with her mind and heart. Arik remained at her side, guiding her, encouraging her, grounding her when fear threatened to overwhelm. The bond between them deepened, not just as love, but as trust forged in danger. Yet even as they trained, the whispers from Zytheria reached them. Queen Solara had learned of the incident, and her fury was contained but palpable. The princess flouts her duty, the queen told her council. Her recklessness endangers the empire and the alliances we have built. Prepare a message. Remind her of the cost of defiance. One evening, Lyra and Arik ventured outside the city to the cliffs overlooking the sea. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. She let herself release her energy, practicing control in the open air. Streams of light flowed from her hands, dancing across the rocks and water like ribbons of moonlight. It's beautiful, Arik whispered, awe in his voice. It's alive like you are. The energy around her stabilized, no longer wild and uncontrolled, but gentle and radiant. For the first time, she felt mastery over her power, and with it, a sense of purpose. But mastery came with responsibility. She knew that if the alien faction or her mother learned how strong she had become, they would act. And soon, the first true test arrived without warning. During a late-night meeting in the city, Lyra and Arik were surrounded by agents from the rival faction. Humans and aliens alike blocked every exit, their weapons drawn but cautious. Lyra's heart pounded. She could feel the energy inside her, eager to burst forth. Stay calm, Arik whispered. We can do this. She focused, drawing on the glow inside her, shaping it into a barrier around them. The agents lunged, and the energy flared, creating a dome of light that forced them back. The power was raw but controlled, and Lyra could sense the fear and awe in the eyes of their attackers. "They will not harm us," she said firmly, her voice carrying authority she had never felt before. "Not while I can protect us. What if I hurt someone by mistake?" But even as they celebrated, the shadow of her mother loomed. Queen Solara had not acted yet, but her patience was like ice, cold, calculating, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lyra could feel it, like a weight pressing on her chest, reminding her that freedom came at a price. One night, as they returned to the observatory, Lyra stopped, gazing at the horizon. "I feel it," she said quietly. "The Empire, my mother, they are coming. I can feel her watching even from here." As she looked up at the stars, she whispered to herself, "I will not let fear control me. I choose my heart. I choose him." The time for hiding, for secret meetings, for quiet rebellion was ending. The choices she had made were about to collide with destiny, power, and love. The night ended with the glow of her power still lingering around her, soft and beautiful. It was a promise of what she could become, and a warning of the trials ahead. The rebellion of her heart and her soul had begun, and the stars themselves seemed to watch with bated breath. The wind howled across the cliffs of Zytheria, carrying the scent of distant oceans and the faint shimmer of starlight. Princess Lyra stood at the edge, her silver robes fluttering like waves around her feet. The glow within her pulsed gently, a reflection of the emotions she carried: fear, hope, love, and the ever-present weight of duty. Eric stood beside her, silent but steadfast. He had followed her to this ancient place, the temple of Lyra's ancestors, where whispered legends told of guidance, power, and understanding for those who sought it. The temple was carved into the cliffs themselves, its walls shimmering with symbols older than the stars. It had been a place of meditation, of learning, and of revelation for generations of Zythurian rulers. Lyra pressed her hands to the smooth stone floor, feeling the pulse of energy beneath her fingertips. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her voice soft against the roar of the wind. "I love him, Eric, but I'm afraid of what my mother will do and what I might become if I cannot control this power. You've discovered something within you that is stronger than any blade or army. You are not alone in this, and you will never be." She felt the power of her ancestors flowing through her, a connection across generations of rulers who had faced choices like hers, balancing duty and heart. "Focus," a voice seemed to whisper from the temple itself. It was not human nor alien, it was the resonance of her lineage calling to her. "Focus and see the truth of your heart." She envisioned Eric standing beside her, fearless and loyal. She envisioned the human world, fragile and vibrant, full of life worth protecting. And she envisioned her people, proud and radiant, yet bound by tradition and law. Her heart ached with the complexity of it all. Could she bridge these worlds? Could she love freely and still honor her people? Eric watched, awe in his gaze, as the glow around Lyra expanded. The air seemed to hum with her energy, subtle yet potent, like sunlight breaking through a storm. "You are magnificent," he said softly, "but you must not fear your own strength. I must show them that love is not weakness." Slowly, she began to understand that her power was not only a reflection of her emotions, but also a tool, a bridge between worlds, a force for hope and change. But the world outside the temple had not remained idle. Queen Solara had received reports of Lyra's growing strength, of the secret bond forming between her daughter and a human. The queen's advisors urged immediate action, but Solara hesitated. A part of her, buried deep beneath duty and pride, still hoped her daughter could choose wisely, that her heart might not destroy the empire. Lyra felt the pull of her mother's gaze across the stars, sharp and demanding. She knew the confrontation was inevitable. The time for secrets, for quiet rebellion, for hidden meetings was ending. Soon, she would have to face not only the queen, but also the empire itself. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the cliffs, Lyra and Eric sat together, their hands entwined. The glow of her power was soft, warm, and steady, reflecting the calm she had finally found within herself. "I am afraid," she admitted, resting her head against his shoulder. "Not of my power, but of her. She will not accept this choice. She will see it as betrayal." She knew he was right. This was no longer about hiding, no longer about fear. It was about claiming her destiny, not as a puppet of tradition, but as a ruler who could bridge worlds, honor her people, and love freely. The next morning, they descended from the cliffs and made their way to the human city. Every step was weighted with purpose, every breath a reminder of what was at stake. Lyra's energy flowed calmly, controlled, a visible aura of strength that drew the eyes of passers-by but went unnoticed by most. She had learned subtlety, how to hide her power until it was needed, and how to channel it without fear. Word had already reached the queen. In her palace, Solara's face was a mask of contemplation. She had watched her daughter from afar, sensing the growth, the mastery, and the courage that now radiated from her. And yet pride warred with fear, love warred with duty. She summoned her council, her voice steady but her heart tumultuous. "The princess has grown beyond what we anticipated," she said. "Her strength, her choices, they challenge everything we have built. Prepare for a confrontation. We will remind her of the cost of defiance." The confrontation began at the palace. Lyra entered the grand hall, her robes flowing, her glow subtle but undeniable. Queen Solara stood at the far end, surrounded by advisors and emissaries, her presence as commanding as ever. The silence was palpable, the tension electric. "Mother," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm, "I have returned. Princess, you have made choices, choices that threaten not only your life but the balance of our empire. Speak now. Defend them." Alien nobles shifted uneasily, emissaries glanced at one another, and even the palace walls seemed to hum with anticipation. Solara's hand trembled above the ceremonial seals, her control slipping for a moment. "You choose a human?" the queen asked, her voice tight with disbelief. "Do you understand what this means? The alliances, the duty, the consequences?" "But I also understand that love is not weakness. I understand that my power is stronger when guided by my heart, not fear. I understand that our worlds can be united not through obligation, but through trust, courage, and compassion. I only wish to stand by her side, to support her, and to help protect what she has chosen. I am not your enemy." For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the hall. Then Solara spoke, her voice steady but carrying the echo of emotion she rarely allowed herself. "If you walk this path, Princess, know that it will not be easy. The Empire may not accept it, and there will be those who seek to test your strength, your heart, and your loyalty. I will face whatever comes, guided by my heart, my love, and my people." Lyra and Eric exchanged a glance, a silent vow that whatever storms came next, they would face them together. Outside the palace, shadows stirred, hinting at rival factions, spies, and forces waiting to challenge the fragile peace. The journey ahead would not be simple. Love and duty would collide, and choices would be tested against the weight of empires. Yet for the first time, Lyra felt true clarity. She had embraced her heart, harnessed her power, and stood beside the one she loved. The path of rebellion, redemption, and courage was hers to walk. And as the twin moons rose over the palace, she whispered to herself and to the winds, "Whatever comes, I choose love. I choose life. I choose him." The twin moons of Zytheria hung low in the violet sky, casting a pale, silvery glow over the palace. Princess Lyra stood at the highest balcony, her silver robes shimmering like liquid starlight, her glow subtle but steady. Below, the city stretched endlessly, a network of towers, gardens, and lights that reflected the empire's grandeur. But her eyes were not on the city, they were on the horizon where the shadows of her enemies and the weight of duty waited. Eric stepped beside her, his hand brushing against hers. "It begins tonight," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." She had grown so much in these past weeks, mastering her powers, embracing her heart, and learning the courage that came from choice. But the trials ahead would test not only her strength, but the bond she shared with Eric and the fate of the Empire itself. In the council chambers, Queen Solara prepared for confrontation. Reports had arrived that rival factions, both alien and human, had begun to mobilize against Lyra's defiance. The Queen's advisors were anxious, urging immediate action to secure the Empire. But Solara paused, her mind torn between duty and the daughter she loved. The princess had shown courage, wisdom, and mastery over powers that could sway the outcome of war. Perhaps the heart could indeed guide as effectively as law and strategy. Lyra entered the throne room, her glow steady, her aura radiating calm authority. The rival factions had arrived at the city gates, and emissaries from distant worlds watched in silent anticipation. Soldiers lined the walls, their weapons gleaming, waiting for the command that could ignite battle. "Mother," Lyra called, her voice clear and unwavering. "I stand before you not to defy, but to unite. The Empire and the human world need not clash. I offer alliance, strength, and a choice guided by love and courage, not fear and obligation. The Empire may not forgive defiance." The rival factions hesitated at the words, unsure of the power this young princess wielded, not just her energy, but the authority that came from conviction. Lyra raised her hands, and the soft glow of her energy expanded, creating a shield around the palace. It was protective, not threatening, a display of power intertwined with compassion. The leaders of the rival factions exchanged wary glances. They had expected submission or fear, but not this, not the unity of strength and heart. Slowly, they lowered their weapons, recognizing that aggression would not win here. Eric stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Lyra's shoulder. "See," he whispered. "They recognize your strength, not because of fear, but because of respect." For the first time, she realized that her choice, her defiance of tradition, her embrace of love, was not a weakness. It was a new form of power, a bridge between worlds that had never before understood one another. The queen approached, her steps measured but firm. She stopped before Lyra, her gaze piercing yet softened by centuries of love and wisdom. "You have shown courage, Lyra," she said. "Not blind courage, but the courage to choose, to face consequences, and to lead with heart. Perhaps I have underestimated the strength of love. I sought to show that the Empire can thrive through compassion, choice, and courage." Word had spread of the princess's declaration and her demonstration of power guided by heart. Murmurs of awe and hope swept through the crowds. This was not a princess who bowed blindly to tradition. This was a leader who had embraced both her heritage and her humanity, forging a path for unity across worlds. Lyra and Eric stepped onto the balcony, holding hands, their eyes reflecting the brilliance of the twin moons. "We did it," Eric whispered, a mixture of disbelief and joy in his voice. "They believe in you, in us. But we have proven that love can be a force as strong as duty, as binding as law, and as enduring as the stars." It was not immediate danger, but a reminder that peace was fragile and that the universe remained vast, mysterious, and unpredictable. Lyra felt it, and Eric sensed it too. "We must remain vigilant," Lyra said softly, "but for tonight we celebrate. Tonight we honor love, choice, and unity." The soft glow of her energy illuminated the petals and leaves, casting an otherworldly beauty across the scene. They paused at a cliff overlooking the city, where the stars reflected like diamonds on water. "You know," Eric said quietly, "I never imagined I would be here, standing with you, helping shape a new future for a galaxy. And yet here we are. I've learned that the heart is not a weakness but a compass, and love can be the strongest power of all." For now, at least, the universe seemed to pause in quiet celebration of their courage. But Lyra's gaze drifted to the horizon, where faint shadows hinted at challenges yet to come. She knew the future would not be without trials. Empires, rival factions, and the mysteries of the cosmos still lay ahead. Yet she felt ready, stronger than ever before, armed with love, courage, and the mastery of her powers. Eric squeezed her hand. "Whatever comes, we face it together. No force in the galaxy can change that." As the twin moons rose higher, bathing the city in their silver light, the citizens, emissaries, and allies looked on with hope. The legend of the princess and the human would spread across worlds, not as a tale of rebellion or defiance alone, but as a story of courage, love, and unity that transcended fear and tradition. The queen stood behind Lyra, watching her daughter with pride and awe. She understood now that leadership was not only about power and duty, but about heart, choice, and the courage to embrace the impossible. The empire had changed, and with it, the hearts of all who lived under its light. Lyra and Eric turned toward each other, the wind playing with their hair, the glow of the moons and her power mingling in the air around them. "This is only the beginning," Lyra said softly. Eric smiled. "Then let's face it together." For in the end, Lyra had chosen not only love, but life, unity, and hope. And in doing so, she had rewritten the stars themselves.